All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Benjamin Solitaire. I'm with the Community Board Advisor for the New York City Civic Engagement Commission. Thank you for coming tonight. Well, I'm sure a few more people will be coming in, but we want to get underway and be respectful of your time. Tonight's session is called the Introduction to Home Ownership in New York City, given by HPD Office of Neighborhood Strategies. Our presenter tonight will be Joshua Horitz. Thank you. I will just want to mention, of course, the CEC, as I was saying a few moments ago, is in the middle of its participatory budgeting process, the people's money, where we are evaluating ideas given by the city on how residents across the city on how we're going to spend part of the city budget. So we'll be keep an eye out on our social media and our newsletter for information about that. And we also do regularly at primary and general elections, we do poll site language assistance for poll sites that we provide interpretation services in languages other than what the Board of Election provides. So we want to make sure that everybody can vote. Everybody has a right to vote in their own language, and we try to provide that service to them. But enough about us. You've come here to listen to HPD. So I will pass it over to Josh. I'll turn off my camera so I don't distract people. But Josh, take it away and feel free to introduce yourself and anybody else on your team.
Great. Thank you so much, Benjamin. I'm just going to get my slideshow up. Share slideshow. There we go. So, yeah, as Benjamin mentioned, my name is Joshua Koritz. I work at the Department of Housing Preservation and Development. I am on a part of the Office of Neighborhood Strategies, where more specifically my team is the owner events and engagement team. Just to do a quick, we have a couple other people on this on here who on my team, Charlisa Lanzat, Isabelina Sosa, and Jenna Goldsobel, and George Jones. They may be popping into the chat to help answer questions at some point. So yeah, they're here to help and here to help answer some questions. I just want to also say before we go any further that, if you have any questions, please get in touch with us. We'll put the information about our phone number and our email address at the end. But yeah, we definitely want to hear from you and hear what you think about this class. And yeah, so we'll get started. So this class is aimed mostly at homeowners who own 1 to 4 unit residential properties. I think most of this information will be useful to condo and co-op owners and also owners of larger buildings. Rules, just to remind people, rules and regulations on buildings tend to get stricter as the number of units go up. So there are going to be things if you own a larger building that maybe apply to you that don't apply in or aren't covered here. We're just wanted to say, our goal here is to give a basic overview of our rules and regulations for owning a home in New York City. That includes the agencies that you have to interact with. And if you have units that you rent, give you an introduction to renting units, and also alert you to some more resources that exist, trying to collect as many of those. And we have this normal thing that just, this is up to date as of today. And as you know, things sometimes change quickly, so they could be wrong tomorrow. But we're striving to get you the most up-to-date information. And just to be very clear that this is, not legal advice, just an introduction. So for today, really want to encourage you to ask questions at any time. You can either do the little hand raise thing, or you can put a question in the chat. we will be we will be monitoring the chat and try to talk about the whatever comes up. And yeah, so please do speak up and contribute. I think your experience is very valuable. We have a few polls here. If you can, please respond to those polls. Somehow it says that twice. We're gonna have to change that. And we have a survey at the end for before you leave. Please stay on mute unless you're speaking. And when you do speak, if you feel comfortable, please show your camera, turn on your camera as well. Great. So today this is how we're gonna go through things. I'm going to start with HPD and other New York City agencies, go a little bit more into home ownership, and then renting units, and then a little bit more about neighborhoods, ending up with some resources, and we'll have some time for questions that didn't get a chance to get answered during the rest of this. So we have a poll. I'm going to open that up for everybody. So if you could, please respond to this poll, and we'll give you give you about a minute here. And if you've already responded to that poll, please type in the Zoom chat. What are you hoping to learn today? What questions do you have? And we'll shout those out as we see them. All right. It's been about a minute, and I see 14 out of the 18 people here have participated. That's great. So I'll give another few seconds here, and then we'll take a look at who's here. I always think that's very an important and interesting thing to look at. All right, so we got 15 out of 18. We're gonna end the poll and share these results. Can people see the results? So we've got, yeah, you can see this. I think it's interesting about what we expect. A few people who own their own home, few tenants, few other co-op or co-owners. Seems like people are interested in the Department of Buildings, and then also HPD. That's good. So we'll try to cover some of these things. I will say that we have another class coming up, and I don't know the exact date and time off the top of my head, but Departments of Buildings is going to do their entire own class, but we'll try to give you a bit of an intro here.
It's January 23rd and the 31st, but I'll post that link in later.
There you go. All right. So let's get started with Department of Housing Preservation and Development, which is where I work. Could I have a volunteer to read this mission?
I'll read it.
Great, please go ahead.
Yeah. Our mission is to promote quality and affordability in the city's housing and diversity and strength in the city's neighborhoods. We do this by maintaining building and resident safety and health, creating opportunities for New Yorkers through housing affordability, and engaging New Yorkers to build and sustain neighborhood strength and diversity. Because every New Yorker deserves a safe, affordable place to live in a neighborhood they love.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, so obviously the mission doesn't tell you everything you need to know about what HPD does, and there's a lot that HPD does. We've tried to talk a little bit about what we do here, just trying to give the things that we feel are the most important for homeowners specifically. So if you this does not apply to you if you live in a condo or a co-op, but registering your building, HPD does this. The HPD has inspections mostly for the interior of homes, so the interior of units. We have preservation loans. We have the housing information classes, which this is one of them. We work with to develop the homeowner help desk, which is at the moment something still to look out for in the future. And we do community outreach to help people know, what their rights are and what resources are out there. So we have links to all of these things as well. If you are interested in any of these things that I am mentioning, please go ahead and say something in the chat, and we can drop links in there for you. Department of Buildings. So this Department of Buildings is an important a department here, the agency. They do anything to do with the structure of building of anything on your property. So that includes building permits when you're doing construction, certificate of occupancy, and a lot of the violations that you might see as a building property owner might come from them. There are also some that come from HPD as well. The Department of Buildings also has relief programs for small homeowners when there are violations. And again, that's something that we can put more in there. Just a couple things about it. As I mentioned before, and Benjamin also mentioned, we're offering a class taught by the Department of Buildings, which will go into much greater depth on everything that they do. But they do have a few really great resources. They have a public portal called DOB Now, which is a tool to sort of access everything and with the Department of Buildings, especially for getting work permits. And they also have something that, they have borough offices throughout the city, and they have, first and third Tuesdays from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. You can go in and ask questions, and they'll help you learn about Department of Buildings and how to navigate that. Thank you, Isabelina, for dropping that information in. So moving right along, the Department of Finance. The Department of Finance is what does taxes, keeps track of deeds and mortgages, and they do have actually a lot of resources for homeowners. They have resources to help prevent deed fraud or report deed fraud. And they also, this is where you will find tax exemptions, and there are a bunch that you can apply for if you qualify. Just a few to mention: solar panels, if you have a disability, and also veterans. There are tax exemptions for all those cases and several more. Just to let you, if you didn't know this already, if your property is assessed at over $250,000, the bills will be mailed to you on twice a year, July 1st and January 1st. So we already did this poll, and so we're just going to keep moving. The Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, you might think, what do they have to do with housing? But actually, they work together with other agencies such as HPD and Department of Buildings, and sanitation as well, because they are responsible for keeping people safe and healthy, and educating people about that. So that includes pest control, window guards, lead paint, which HPD generally does the inspections for, but Department of Health and Mental Hygiene generally does the sets what the regulations are in terms of how to remediate and how to deal with lead paint. We will be offering classes, not as part of this, the community boards sessions, but we're hoping to start up in March. And we will include 2 classes, one about lead paint basics and the other about integrated pest management. Let's see. So just to keep going, the Department of Environmental Protection. So there's an environmental control board, which has, and there are violations, but most people will interact with this department on a regular basis because they are responsible for water and sewer. They do have programs to help you find leaks or damage if your water usage has suddenly increased dramatically, and they do also have some programs to assist you if you fall behind on your water bill. They also, along with NYPD, track noise complaints, and if you ever want to make a complaint or have something like that, calling 311 is the way to get in touch with them. We'll be talking a lot about calling 311 because it's the primary way to get in touch with the city in general, and it's the best way to track, for us to track everything. So the last one that we're going to go through is the Department of Sanitation. They're responsible for garbage collection, recycling, compost, and they're the ones who we report to if there's trash dumping in your neighborhood. Again, that can go through 311. I did want to highlight 2 things. One is that the curbside composting program is my understanding is the spread of it is on hold due to budget cuts. But we do have a link for the curbside composting if it does exist in your neighborhood already, and you can find that out. And also the other thing that's changed, and I would assume that everybody here probably knows about this already, but you now cannot have to wait a little bit longer to place your trash out on the curb for collection after 6 p.m. if it's in a garbage can, and after 8 p.m. if you're putting the bags out directly. Okay, before we move on, are there any questions about the agencies that we might be able to answer? Okay, well, if any come up, please, oh. Oh, I see. So, Teresa said compost has an extension due to an anonymous donor. That's great news. I didn't know that. All right. Well, let's move on. And again, if you have any comments or questions, please do put them in the chat. All right. So This next section, we want to talk about and engage with you about, what the benefits are that you get from being a homeowner. As we said at this sort of in the beginning, HPD's goal is to preserve neighborhoods, and that means keeping you in your home. And we want to recognize that owning a home comes in many different types, from owning, a single freestanding building, attached or semi-attached, a condo, a co-op, or maybe a multi-unit residential building. And each one of these comes with different benefits and responsibilities. So if you could, please take a few seconds and just type in the chat, especially if this is especially for the homeowners out there. What are some benefits to owning your own home? So please type a little bit in the chat. Frank mentioned that mortgage is usually fixed as opposed to rent, which could go up and up and up. That's very true. Get a little bit more control over your finances. You get to control your own heat. That's another good thing about owning a home. Yep. Celeste mentioned that owning your own home can be an investment, and yeah, it's a way that many families look to develop generational wealth, and that's a really important issue. Yep, and that's what Lila is saying as well. I would add just that I think many people feel that when you own your own home, you just have more control over the space that you live in. And many times tenants feel that they are, temporary in a place, and maybe can't paint the walls or something like that. But yeah, and yeah, another benefit is less fear of being forced to move, and you can have an animal if you want. Agreed. All right, we're going to keep going. But I think that it's good to remind ourselves, why people want to own homes and why we own homes if we do. Now, as I mentioned, at HPD, our goal is to protect and to preserve neighborhoods. And that means starting with financial stability. We have, and we can again drop in these links in the chat. Foreclosure prevention services. There are some in the city that you can contact the Center for New York City Neighborhoods, which we work closely with. There's a one-shot deal emergency assistance program. There's tax credits, exemptions, and abatements. I would mention that a good resource for that is the homeowner handbook, which again, you can find. We'll drop a link to that as well. Oh, I'm sorry. And then also when it comes to protecting your homes, climate resiliency is an important thing. I think everybody who was in New York City this September dealt with some sort of emergency or some sort of inconvenience when it came to that sudden heavy rainstorm. I know I got caught on the subway, didn't actually make it all the way into work that day. And sort of planning for this and being prepared and we're going to be offering a class on that in the future as well. And then another, I think, really important thing is estate planning. And I know a lot of people don't like to think about that, but having a will and letting the people who, your beneficiaries know what is in that will is actually very important for safeguarding um, your family legacy. Um, we have been hearing a lot from the sheriff's office and other organizations that generational wealth is being stolen um, by scammers, by people who find ways of getting around. And the most important thing is to sort of plan ahead and have do a state get a will. We're planning a full class on that with more resources as well. Then the last thing I would mention is this is for condo owners, and is that you will likely have a homeowners association. And interestingly, the only real regulation on those in state law that I'm aware of, and still trying to learn more about this, is that HOAs must be nonprofits, not for profits. And we do have a link for more information if you're interested in learning more about that. Oh, and one other thing I should mention is that there's a bunch of different ways to help safeguard your property in terms of any new documents about mortgages or deeds or anything like that are recorded in a system called ACRIS, and there's a way of getting notified if anything new comes up there. And also that there's a sheriff's office report form if you think you're a victim of deed theft or deed fraud. All right. So a little bit more about flood help and climate resiliency. As I said, and we are experiencing flooding more and more in New York City. And this map that you see here shows the areas that are prone to coastal flooding. But I think as we sort of have experienced that, heavy rains can happen any time of year really, and they can impact the entire city, not just in these areas. We partner with a bunch of different organizations, but the Center for New York City Neighborhoods is the primary one, and on this floodhelpny.org, which is a fantastic resource for any homeowners concerned about how do you get flood insurance or just be prepared for floods in general. There's also a few other resources. There's the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice and other in the New York City Panel on Climate Change. But the main thing that we want to stress for everyone is to be as prepared as possible. And that means both physically in terms of preparing the actual property in the case of floods, and also financially and just organizationally having go bags and registering your property as well. So 311 is the main way that you get in touch with New York City government. You can report any issue in your neighborhood that way. I have a few listed here, but I would also say that this is everything from there's a construction worker hanging from the roof of your neighbor by instead of being strapped in, there's a shoelace and you're worried about somebody getting hurt, call 311. On the other hand, if there's a fire, do not call 311, call 911. Emergencies, that's what that's for. When you do call 311, or report online. There's also a mobile app. It's important to keep track of your service request numbers. And that's both so that you can call back and find updates on things, but also if you have to call again or you have to report this again, they need to know that you've done it before, and having your service request number helps track how many times this has happened. 311 generally works, in the way that you would think it would. It gets inquiries either through a phone call or through online, and that's routed to the appropriate agency. Then that agency will sometime, has their own ticketing system and will have their own numbers, but they will assess the severity of what's the issue being reported, and will send out a code inspector, or they will contact the owner of a property, or respond in the appropriate way. And the timeline that will be heavily based on the issue. Before we move on, any sort of questions from this section? Give a few seconds just so that people can type in the chat if you want. All right, we'll keep going then. So we're going to move on to, again, this is not going to apply to all homeowners, because not all homeowners have units that they rent out to other people. But some of the basic tenants here, tenants, do apply to anyone with a home, who owns a home. So just to kick us off, when you are managing a property, when you have a home where you're renting, what are some of the important skills to have? If people could, either unmute and talk about one of these things, or write something in the chat about why these might be useful for property owners. Well, I think all of these are really important. I know that staying on top of what I have to do next is really important in my work, and staying organized. I'm not a homeowner, but I think that whenever you have somebody else living on your property, you want to make sure that you have everything in, all the documents and all of the reports and everything that you need, well organized and easily accessible, and making sure that everything's on the up and up. So that's the one that I would highlight. So the duties of a homeowner with tenants, we've broken them down into three separate categories: compliance, maintenance, financial. Some of these things are, fall into both of them or all three of these. But yeah, let's go into it a little bit more. So for compliance, this means making sure that your property is up to code. If you have if your home has 3 or more residential units. You must register annually, and that registering your home is due by September 1st. It's a cheap application fee of $13. Get more into that in a little bit. If you rent out a 1 or 2 unit home and you don't live there, you also must register. The only exception is if you are in a 1 or 2 unit home and you live there, then you don't. That's the only exception for mandatory registration. Though we would really recommend everybody does register their home. But compliance includes fire safety, smoke and carbon monoxide alarms, making sure that heat and hot water follow the guidelines, window guards, required notices and signage. So we're gonna try this again. We have got a discussion question here because we sometimes get this question of why do all these regulations exist? If people want to type something in the chat or they want to speak up, that would be great. Love to hear from you. I'll give us a minute. All right, well, let's just keep going. Oh, here we go. We got something. Oh, here we go. A few things. Yeah. So I see I think it's important to regulations help help neighbors from imposing on each other. It sets guidelines for what can be done. There are protections for both landlords and renters, and for the safety of tenants, and also to make sure first responders can get in and out of properties. And yeah, so regulations, I think, very much exist to make sure that our neighborhoods are safe and consistent. And they do place limits on how much and on how much our decisions about our private property affect our immediate neighbors and the community at large. So they are for protection and safety. A couple other things just to point out about compliance. Heat is mandatory from October 1st to May 31st, whenever the outside temperature is 55 degrees or under. Heat must be at minimum of 68 between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. and 62 degrees from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. or at night. Hot water must be provided year round with a minimum constant temperature of 120 degrees. And yeah, that's a bunch about compliance. There's obviously a lot more. There's a lot more when it comes to if you're going to do construction or you're going to do repairs or modifications to your property, and that goes through the Department of Buildings. And there's also we have, there's required signage. If you own a home that where you have tenants, you have to put up signs letting people know what their rights are, and there's a few other ones as well. But if people are interested in that, again, we have links we can drop in the chat. So registering your property with HPD. So as I mentioned, you must register your home if it's 3 or more residential units, and you must register your home if it's 1 or 2 units and you don't live there. We really recommend that you do register your property. It'll make sure that if there are any violations that happen, they go directly to you. They don't, it's the violations or anything like that don't go to some other office. They also, if there is any emergency, there's a fire nearby, or there's damage, or there's flooding damage, and the city is doing something in your area, or has to actually respond to your property, that they will contact you directly. So it's due by September 1st, and it's only $13 a year, so I think it's well worth it. All right. So going on to other duties of a homeowner, maintenance. This is, as you would think, mostly a physical question. Everything from making sure that the garbage and recycling are put out on a regular basis, keeping pests and mold at bay, checking for gas leaks. I think, and the safety of tenants, neighbors, and community members are really paramount here. So maintaining a physical structure is important. A note about sidewalks in New York City, the homeowner is responsible for sidewalks. If you're in a condo and the condo association, the homeowners association will be responsible for the sidewalk outside the building. Now, if the sidewalk is destroyed by a tree that's on public land, so it's like in between your property and the street, the New York parks will often do those repairs. There's a whole program for applying for that and trying to get them to come out. But it is something that you have to budget for and you have to think about. I would also say it's really important that homeowners and tenants as well know what the signs of a gas leak are, because they can be very dangerous. Smell is a distinctive, strong odor like rotten eggs. You might see a white cloud, mist, fogs, bubbles in standing water, or vegetation that is dead for no reason or dying for no reason. And you might hear a roaring, hissing, or whistling sound. When it comes to staying in compliance, sort of backtracking just a little bit, I wanted to give just a HPD violations guide. There's 3 classes of violations that HPD deals with. For reasons that I don't understand, they go from Class A is the least urgent, and Class C is the most urgent. Excuse me. An example of Class A violations might be a smoke detector is missing, or there's a failure to post a notice in the building. And they have, homeowners have 90 days before to correct that before incurring penalties. Class B is something that might be hazardous, but is not immediately hazardous. And I found a few examples of that as well. For example, like if there's a cinder block that's propping an emergency door open, that would be an example. Or even a bed bug infestation in one unit would be an example as well, or has been an example. I'm not quite sure where the difference is between some of those infestations in Class B and why they're some are in Class C. But that's something that we can, if you have questions about that, we can get back to you and definitely learn a little bit more about. The Class C are things that are immediately hazardous. Heat and hot water not being on, or mold, window guards not being on, lead paint, things like that. So when it comes to again, owning a home and having tenants, there's also the financial aspect. And as we mentioned when we talked about the Department of Finance a little bit, and this is the main department you'll deal with when it comes to finances, everything starts with your deed and mortgage records, and that is all on ACRIS, which is a public public database that keeps track of all those documents. You have to pay property taxes and keep up with your mortgage and utility bills. And then for those tenants, you have to keep track of the lease agreements, collecting rents, managing escrow accounts for security deposits. And if there are any rental assistance programs that either that your tenants are using, you have to engage with those and make sure that that you're responding promptly and making sure all the paperwork is done. When it comes to the rules and rights of homeowners with tenants, homeowners cannot enter a unit once they've leased it to someone without the explicit permission of the tenant. That's important to note and important to keep in mind. And that applies to all homeowners, all landlords, all properties. There's also there's a reasonable laws that require landlords to make reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities. This, if you attended the class yesterday with the Commission on Human Rights, they went into that a lot more, and they're the ones who really decide what qualifies as reasonable. So they're the ones to talk to if that's something you need to talk about. Evictions must go through housing court. So if there's a problem with a tenant not paying rent, you cannot just change the locks on them. You cannot just throw their stuff out on the curb. You must go through housing court. And I would hope this would go without saying, but it doesn't. Discrimination and harassment are illegal in housing, and no tenant or landlord should ever have to deal with discrimination or harassment. Oh yes, thank you, Stacy. The Borough of Staten Island does not use ACRIS. That they have a separate website for that. Thank you for that that clarification. So as I mentioned, the New York Commission on Human Rights is responsible for any discrimination, reports of discrimination. They have identified 19 different protected statuses that you cannot deny someone housing because they fall into one of these categories. So you can't, for example, you can't change rental terms based on source of income. You can't post ads saying, that it's only for people with children or only for people without children. And as I mentioned, you must provide reasonable accommodation for a tenant with disability. And it's important to note that Section 8 vouchers and other rental assistance programs count as income. And so you cannot discriminate against prospective tenants and current tenants based on the source of their income. I thought I attended the class with the Commissioner on Human Rights yesterday, and I thought it was very, very informative. If you haven't been able to attend that, I believe we'll be offering it again for community board members. I really recommend it. Yeah, I thought it was there's a lot to learn there. I would also say that if you are a homeowner, know that the Commission on Human Rights does conduct proactive tests to, where they will, have somebody pretend to apply to an apartment or to a unit and to try to see if landlords are discriminating in their practice. Oh yeah, excellent. Thank you, Benjamin. The last sort of part about being a landlord is short-term rentals and Airbnb. There was a update to just the way that this works in September 2023. The law that says, well, I'll explain a little bit more about it in a second, but you must register all short-term rentals with the mayor's office of special enforcement. The link is here and we can drop it in the chat as well. But here is the basic rules. You can only rent out an entire apartment for 30 days or more, even if you live in the building. If guests are going to stay in your home for less than 30 days, then you must be present in the same unit or apartment during your guest's stay. There's more about this, and I think if you want to learn more about it, there's a good section in the homeowner handbook about that and what those rules are. So just before we move on, are there any questions about being a homeowner and having tenants, or any comments, or anything else we can address? Okay, we can move on. So oftentimes, we've thought about being a homeowner in the context of your property and what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do and what your rights and responsibilities and what the benefits are. But we also know that when you live in a neighborhood, whether you're a homeowner or not, what happens in your neighborhood affects you. And we really, as part of HPD, really want to encourage everybody to think about their neighborhood as a place where a community where we have mutual interest with our neighbors to keep our block and neighborhood clean and beautiful. We face the same issues as all of our neighbors, from snow in the winter to high heat in the summer and potential flood risks. And so we really encourage people to be friendly and get to know your neighbors. In order to sort of re-engage and get some thinking going, I'd like to open up this poll. There it is. And if people could respond and just think about it, what does your ideal neighborhood look like? What are the two most important attributes?
I don't see anything. I don't see a survey.
You don't see a poll?
Oh,
Where is it showing up for other people? Because I see a bunch of people have been able to answer.
I think you may have to open the chat to access it. I did.
I don't see that. I just see a link from Jenna about registration law. Oh, well.
Okay, well, I see that it seems like I'm going to end the poll so that everybody can see it. and share those results. So if you look, seems like the most popular is friendly block, where people know each other. And there's also a emphasis on cleanliness. Yeah, we all want to live in a place that makes us happy and uh, you know, promotes both mental and physical well-being. So I'm going to stop sharing that poll. This is where we talk about participation in your community. And this is normally where I would tell people what community boards are, but I think you probably know better than I do, all of you. And but I think it's important that we take an active role in our communities. There are many opportunities for that. And yeah, it's worth pointing out that through community boards, council member offices. Sorry, the lights in my office are on a motion detector. You can have a say in neighborhood planning and development. There usually public developments are going to be much more open and have many more opportunities for input and for engagement. And there are some even that HPD does as well, where we take public land and develop projects mostly based on what the community wants, and usually with some affordable housing involved in that. All right. All right. So then we know that our neighborhoods are always changing. And I think that's an important thing for us to remember as well, that these changes can positively and sometimes negatively impact us. So we're just very interested if you have, if you know if there's construction in your neighborhood or abandoned housing somewhere. I know for me, I can immediately picture where the abandoned buildings are and also where the new construction is, because I walk past it almost every day. So 11 people have responded. Give a few more seconds for a few more people to respond. All right. So as you can see, most people have either know of new construction that's happening and abandoned building, or know of, yeah, most people have new construction around them. It seems like maybe not as many abandoned buildings. That's a good thing. We don't want to see abandoned buildings. They are not particularly good for us. And we wanted to talk a little bit about them because they're refuge for pests. They're unsafe for our communities. They're an eyesore that can, in fact, sort of make your quality of life feel lower. And I wanted to mention the Zombie Homes Initiative, which is an initiative from HPD and actually the team that I'm on, where we identify 1 to 4 unit abandoned homes, and we make sure that if there's a mortgage or if they're in foreclosure, that the lender actually keeps the the building up to code and clean and looking nicer. This is a picture of that. And you can report abandoned buildings or any type of abandoned buildings through 311. And we recommend that you do that early and often so that we know about them and we can do our best to get them, fixed up and back to usage as quickly as possible, even if that's sometimes a lengthy process. All right, so this is sort of the final section that we have for you, and this is really resources of where to look, particularly in terms of city resources. For housing, always start with 311. If you know that you need to talk to somebody in HPD but really don't know who to talk to, we have the HPD navigators. There's also HPD Online, which is a great resource for finding out about open violations or history of your building. We also, the HPD has the whole code enforcement section. There are offices in all 5 boroughs. You can call them. And then also we have the Department of Environmental Protection. As I mentioned, there's a leak forgiveness program. There's frequently asked questions as well. I had to break up all the resources into 2 slides because there's so much. Again, if you want to contact any of these, you've heard about them, you don't quite know what they are, you're not sure, calling 311 will help you find them. So we always recommend that you start with 311. The Department of Buildings has a bunch, they have a project advocate program. What that is if you want to do, repairs or modifications to your home, they will help you find someone who can help you navigate all the permits and everything else that you need. Just to point out a few others, the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene has a whole Healthy Homes program, which includes lead poisoning and pest control and things like that. I believe we've mentioned the Sanitation and Department of Finance resources as well. I wanted to go again into the homeowner handbook. It's an amazing resource really for the specifics of all the different programs that have been mentioned and many more that I haven't mentioned actually. This is a really great place to find out if you qualify for tax incentives or abatements or credits or anything like that, as well as this whole list and more. And yes, thank you, Jenna, for putting the link to it in the chat, and it is available in several languages as well. If you're working with contractors or repairs, so this is where, so the homeowner handbook is a project that we, of the homeowner help desk, which is something we're hoping to bring online soon. It's a partnership with the Center for New York City Communities, New York City Neighborhoods, sorry. And that's the homeownerhelp.ny.org. But there are many others. I highly recommend reaching out to NHS Brooklyn, NHS Queens, any of the NHSs. They also offer classes like this one, and they also offer help with any housing needs you have at all, working with repairs, working with contractors, either through trainings or through one-on-one advising. Kinetic Communities and Solar One are both nonprofit organizations that will help you if you want to make your home more energy efficient or install solar panels. They are not the contractors themselves, but they will help you find licensed contractors and understand the whole process and make sure you get all the tax incentives and everything like that. keep going. There are many other community groups that work for housing. There's a special 311 program for it. If you call 311 and ask for Homeowner Hub, they will help you find a organization in your area. These are just a few of the ones that HPD works with. So yeah, those are all of these are great resources for any homeowners. If you have legal help, again, the Homeowner Hub is a good place. There's also a great organization called Housing Court Answers. They have a hotline. They actually teach a class with us called, Housing Court Answers, and learning about how housing court actually works. There's also Legal Services New York and a few other organizations that you can reach out to. The classes like today that we offer, everything from, as I said, housing court and rent regulations to Department of Buildings, lead paint, estate planning and preventing deed theft. We're working on also a class about solar power and energy efficiency, as well as flood preparedness and climate resiliency. Please do send us an email if you have any questions about that. Our email is at the very bottom. And that's really the end of our presentation. I believe that, Benjamin, you have a survey for everybody to fill out. And I really want to solicit your feedback. What can we do better? Was this useful? Would you recommend this class to friends and family? And this is an opportunity for any last questions.
Just I'll send a survey and an email follow-up tomorrow with more information about upcoming workshops.
Great. Any questions and again, if you think of any later, please do reach out to us.
All right, I don't see anything there. But yeah, we'll share this contact information. Thank you, Annette. And thank you, Joshua, and his team for doing this. We do have this and other ones. Again, I put the link for all of our workshops coming up. When I send out the survey, we'll send out links to the other upcoming housing related, as well as we have conflict resolution and language access workshops coming up also. But thank you so much for spending your Thursday evening. Try to stay safe tomorrow. I don't know how bad this storm is. I've heard 3 to 5 inches. So stay and very cold. So stay safe, stay warm. And thank you for all the work you folks do on the community boards. I served on CV6 in Brooklyn for several years. So I know how hard it is and all the great work you do. But if there's nothing else, Josh, I think we should sign off and let people go on with their evening.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending.
Thanks and have a good night.
Good night.